3 weeks ago, I put on a maid's uniform and walked into a mansion I built with my own 2 hands. Not because I had to, because I had to know the truth. My name is Eleanor Whitfield, and the woman standing in my son's kitchen, holding a glass, she thought no one was watching. She had no idea the help scrubbing her floors was the same woman who raised a billionaire from nothing 23 years ago. I was 17, pregnant, and alone. A man promised me forever and left before our son took his first breath. My own family put me out on the street the same week. I had nothing, no home, no name worth saying out loud. So I made a promise. Standing in the rain with nowhere else to go, my son would never know what it felt like to be unwanted. He didn't. He built an empire. And now, he was about to marry a woman I didn't trust. So I did the only thing a mother like me knows how to do. I disappeared into the one role no one questions, the maid, and what I saw in that house would change everything. People think strength is loud. It isn't. Strength is quiet. Strength is getting up at 4 in the morning when your whole body wants to stay in bed and cry. I met Marcus Bellamy when I was 16. He had a smile that made you forget every warning your mother ever gave you about boys like him. He told me I was the only girl for him. He told me that one day, everyone would call me his wife. I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. Then I found out I was pregnant. I remember the exact way his face changed when I told him. Not surprise, not joy, just a door closing behind his eyes. I'm not ready to be a father. He said, I can't do this. He begged him. I told him we could face it together. He told me he wanted nothing to do with me, or the baby growing inside me. Then he told me to forget him, and to leave his house before morning. My own parents weren't much kinder. My father looked at me like I was a stranger wearing his daughter's face. How can a girl like you bring this shame into my house, he asked. My mother didn't even look at me when she said the last thing I ever heard her say. Who will marry a girl like that now? That night, I left with nothing but the clothes on my back and a life growing inside me that nobody wanted but me. I found a one-room apartment on the edge of town. The kind of place where the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbors' arguments and your own regrets at the same time. I cleaned offices at night. I sold oranges at the market in the early morning, calling out to strangers with a voice that shook from exhaustion. Not cold. There was a woman at the market, an old fruitseller, who used to slip an extra orange into my bag without charging me for it. You'll need your strength, child, she'd say. She never asked questions. She just gave what she could. The night my son was born, I was alone in that apartment, praying to a God I wasn't sure was listening anymore. But he was. Because when I heard my baby cry for the first time, I understood something I hadn't understood before. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I had a reason to. I named him Nathaniel. It means gift from God, and God knows. He was the only gift I had left. I remember the winters when I sold my one good coat so he could have a warmer blanket. I remember pretending I wasn't hungry so there'd be more food on his plate. I remember holding him close and whispering the same promise, over and over, like a prayer. You'll grow up strong. You'll grow up successful. I'll make sure of it, even if it's the last thing I do. There was a man who wanted to marry me. Years later, a good man, in his own way, but he looked at how much I loved my son, and he couldn't compete with it. You will never love me fully, he told me once. He was right, because when you've lost everything once, there's only room left in your heart for the one thing that never left you. And that little boy holding my hand, asking why he didn't have a father like the other kids. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to become the reason I survived everything. There's a particular kind of hunger that comes from watching your mother sacrifice everything for you. It doesn't fade when you grow up. If anything, it grows sharper. I was 7 years old the first time I asked my mother why I didn't have a father like the other kids at school. I remember the way her hands stopped moving over the stove. Just for a second, before she turned around with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You have a father, Nathaniel," she said, "but he isn't with us." She told me everything that night. About Marcus, about being cast out, about the years of oranges and thin walls and cold winters. I was too young to understand all of it. But I understood enough. I understood that my mother had built a life out of nothing, using only her bare hands and a promise she refused to break. "It's okay, Mama," I told her. "You're the best parent I could ever have." I meant it, but somewhere in that moment, something else took root in me too. A quiet, burning need to make every single sacrifice she'd made worth something. I didn't want to just survive like she had. I wanted to build something so solid, so undeniable, that no one could ever look at either of us the way her own family once had. So I studied, not because I loved textbooks, but because every grade felt like a brick in a foundation I was building for both of us. While other kids played after school, I sat with secondhand books under a secondhand lamp, telling myself that tired hands write better essays than idle ones. My mother worked 2 jobs so I could afford a laptop that was already outdated the day we bought it. I remember staying up until sunrise, teaching myself to code from free tutorials, because tuition for proper classes cost more than we had. I remember the first time I built something that actually worked. A small payment tool for local vendors like the woman who used to sell my mother oranges. I showed it to her, and she looked at the screen like it was something holy. "You built this yourself?" she asked. "With a small team." I said, "But yes." "So this is all yours?" I looked at her. At the woman who had given up her own future so I could have one. "It's ours, Mama," I told her. "Everything I build is ours." That small payment tool became the seed for what would eventually grow into Whitfield Dynamics. It took years of nights without sleep, investors who said no more times than I could count, and a stubbornness I inherited directly from a woman who once sold oranges to survive. By the time I was in my late 20s, Whitfield Dynamics had become one of the fastest growing financial technology companies in the country. I had the mansion. I had the kind of success people write magazine profiles about. But success has a strange side effect. It makes you forget how to trust people who suddenly want to be close to you. I told myself I'd never let anyone use me the way Marcus had used my mother. I told myself I was too smart, too careful, too guarded for that. I was wrong, because the moment I let my guard down for the woman I thought I loved, I nearly repeated the exact mistake I swore I'd never make. I met Vanessa Sterling at a charity gala I almost didn't attend. I remember the room being full of the usual crowd, people who smiled with their mouths but calculated with their eyes. And then there was her, standing near the window in a deep emerald dress, laughing at something so genuinely that for a moment, the whole room seemed to quiet down around her. She caught me staring. She didn't look away. She smiled instead, the kind of smile that felt like an invitation and a challenge at the same time. "You're Nathaniel Whitfield," she said, walking over before I could even introduce myself. "I was told you don't come to these things anymore." "I don't," I admitted. "I'm not sure why I came tonight." "Maybe you were meant to," she said. And something about the way she said it made me forget. Just for a second, every reason I had to be careful. Vanessa was a fashion designer, the kind of woman who seemed to belong in every room she entered. She was elegant, without trying too hard, confident without ever tipping into arrogance. She asked me questions about my company that showed she'd actually done her research, not just skimmed a headline. Over the following weeks, she became someone I looked forward to seeing. She sent me articles she thought I'd find interesting. She remembered small details. The way I took my coffee, The fact that I hated wasting time in unnecessary meetings. She made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. My mother noticed the change in me before I said a word about it. "You seem lighter these days." "My son," she said one evening, "there's someone I've been seeing." "Mama," I told her. "Her name is Vanessa. She's amazing, beautiful, confident, sophisticated. I think she might be the one." "You've never mentioned her before," my mother said carefully. "Why haven't you brought her to meet me? She's been busy with work." I said, "But I promise, you'll meet her soon." My mother went quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that used to make me nervous as a child. "My son has suffered too much to marry wrongly." She finally said, "I don't want to judge her before I meet her, but promise me you'll be careful." I promised her I would, and I believed I was being careful. 6 months later, on a rooftop overlooking the city, surrounded by candles, I'd spent an embarrassing amount of time arranging myself. I got down on one knee. "Vanessa," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "These past few months have been the best of my life. You've brought joy into my world, and I can't imagine my future without you. Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones. Or so I believed. "Yes, Nathaniel, of course I will. I love you." I called my mother that same night, practically breathless with happiness. "Mama, Vanessa and I are engaged." There was a pause on the line, longer than I expected. "That's wonderful." "My son," she finally said, "when will I meet her? Very soon?" "Mama," I promised, but somewhere behind her congratulations. I heard something else in my mother's voice, something careful, something that sounded almost like worry. I told myself it was nothing. I was wrong about that too. The night everything changed started with something as ordinary as walking home from the market. I was carrying 2 bags of groceries. The evening settling into that particular shade of blue it takes on right before the streetlights come alive. When 2 men stepped out from between the buildings, dropped the bag. One of them said, his voice flat and certain, like he'd done this before and expected no trouble. My hands went cold around the handles. "Please," I said, "I have nothing of value. Let her go." The voice came from behind me, sharp and unafraid, a young woman in a work blazer, her bag slung across her body, was already moving toward us like she hadn't stopped to consider the danger. "This is none of your business," the man snapped. "You heard me," she said, not backing away an inch. "Let her go, or I'm calling the police right now." Something in her voice must have convinced them it wasn't worth the trouble, because they melted back into the shadows as quickly as they'd appeared. My hands were still shaking when she reached me. "Are you okay?" she asked, gently taking one of my bags without waiting for permission. "I am now. Thanks to you," I said. "You weren't afraid I was terrified," she admitted, a small, honest laugh escaping her. "But I couldn't just walk past and leave you there. God will reward you for that." "Child," I told her. "What's your name, Grace?" She said, "Grace Bennett." She insisted on walking me the rest of the way home, and I found myself grateful for the company as much as the safety. There was something about her, an easy warmth that didn't seem to be performing for anyone. It wasn't until days later, asking around out of simple curiosity, that I learned Grace worked as a secretary at Whitfield Dynamics. At my son's company, I sat with that information for a long time before I brought it up with Nathaniel. "Do you remember the woman who helped me the other night?" I asked him. "Her name is Grace. She works at your office." His eyes lit up with recognition. "Grace, she saved you. She didn't know who I was." I said, "She just saw someone who needed help, and she didn't hesitate. She's a good person." He said, "Hardworking, humble." I rely on her constantly at the office. But I asked, hearing the hesitation in his voice, I know what you're thinking. Mama, he said, almost defensive, but I've never thought of her that way. She's simple. I respect her, but I'm usually drawn to women who carry themselves like Vanessa does. Sophistication is a nice quality. Nathaniel, I told him, but it isn't what makes a good wife. A selfless heart, loyalty, kindness. Those are the things that actually last. He told me he understood. He told me Vanessa was kind too, that I'd see it once I finally met her. I wanted to believe him, but I'd learned, a long time ago, that the people who show their true face when they think no one important is watching are the only ones worth trusting completely. That night, I made a decision I hadn't fully admitted to myself until the words were already leaving my mouth. Nathaniel, I said, I need to know if Vanessa is the right woman for you. I can't shake this feeling that something is off. Will you let me test her? He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Test her, Mama. How I'll move into your mansion. I said, but not as your mother. I'll be your maid. And we'll see exactly how Vanessa treats a woman she believes is powerless. My son argued with me for nearly an hour before he finally agreed. Vanessa is busy planning our wedding. He said, she's not going to have time to focus on the staff. Mama, I don't think this is necessary. If you truly want my blessing on this marriage, I told him, you'll let me do this. If she passes, I'll welcome her into this family with my whole heart. He gave in, the way he always did when he saw I wouldn't be moved. And so, from that day forward, my name in that house was Ruth. Nathaniel gathered the staff quietly before I arrived. This is Ruth, the new maid. He told them, treat her exactly like anyone else. No mistakes. No special treatment. I settled into the role faster than I expected. There's something almost peaceful about being invisible in a room. About people speaking freely around you because they've stopped seeing you as a person capable of understanding what they're saying. Vanessa moved into the mansion that same week, at Nathaniel's suggestion, to help finalize the wedding plans. I watched her walk through the front doors like she already owned every inch of the marble beneath her heels. Can someone take my bags upstairs? She called out, not even glancing toward me directly. Then, quieter, to Nathaniel, as if I couldn't hear her at all. Be careful with that one. It's very expensive. That one, as if I were furniture that happened to move on its own. The small cruelties came slowly at first. The way a bruise starts is nothing more than a strange tenderness before it fully forms. She'd ask for water and never say thank you. She'd comment on my age, my slowness, the village manners she assumed I must have, all delivered with a smile so polished it could have passed for kindness to anyone who wasn't paying attention. Then one evening, I brought her dinner, and the plate had cooled slightly on the walk from the kitchen. Why is this food cold? She snapped, loud enough for Nathaniel to hear from the next room. I'm sorry, ma'am, I said, keeping my eyes down. I'll warm it up right away. I heard him ask her, gently, if she'd been too harsh with me. She's just the help. Nathaniel, she said, waving the concern away like a fly. These people, if you're too nice to them, they start acting like they belong here. You shouldn't feel guilty for holding her accountable. I stood in that kitchen with the plate still warming, and I thought about every year I'd spent scrubbing floors that weren't mine, and how easily some people forget that the woman serving their dinner has a whole life, a whole history, a whole heart beating underneath the uniform. The insults grew bolder the longer she believed no one who mattered was truly listening. Old woman, can't you move any faster? She said one afternoon, watching me clear a table. You're slower than a Sunday morning. I'm sorry, ma'am, I told her. I'll be quicker. You forgot to clean this glass yesterday. she said another time, holding it up to the light, like evidence in a trial. You're old. And clearly a little lazy. I honestly don't understand why Nathaniel keeps you around. I looked at her then. Really looked at her. And something in me almost broke the character I was wearing. I could be your mother. You know, I said quietly, I'm not as young as I once was. A little patience wouldn't cost you anything. She laughed. Short and sharp. Like the idea itself was absurd. My mother, she said, could never be a poor, pathetic maid like you. So stop pretending you're anyone important. And get back to work. I picked up the tray with hands that had raised a billionaire. And I walked away without another word. But I remembered every single one of hers. There's a particular silence that falls over a house when someone thinks they're completely alone in it. I'd learned, in my weeks as Ruth, that people speak a different language when they believe the only person listening is someone they've decided doesn't count. I heard things in that mansion I was never meant to hear. Most of it was ordinary cruelty. But one conversation changed everything. I was polishing silverware in the hallway outside Vanessa's room when I heard her voice through the door. Low and urgent. Speaking to someone on the phone. I'm pregnant, she said. And I can't tell Nathaniel, because we've never even been intimate. It's all because of his ridiculous mother and her old-fashioned advice. Wait until marriage, he says. Who does that anymore? My hands went still around the silver in my grip. I can't lose him, she continued, her voice sharpening into something desperate. He's my golden ticket. If I lose him, I lose everything. There was a pause, and then her voice dropped even lower. What do you mean? Put something in his drink. Are you serious? Another pause. Whatever the voice on the other end said, it seemed to convince her. Fine, she said. I'll do it tonight. He'll be home late. I'll make sure it happens. He'll never know what hit him. I stood frozen in that hallway for a long moment, the tray trembling slightly in my hands. I thought about the young girl I'd once been, standing in the rain with nothing, betrayed by a man who'd promised her forever. I thought about my son, who had built himself out of nothing so that no woman would ever look at him the way people once looked at me. Not my son. Not again. Not this family. I spent the rest of that day watching her every movement without seeming to watch at all. I heard her tell the grocery vendor she needed something for later. Something to help a man relax. I told myself I still needed proof. Something undeniable. Before I said a single word to Nathaniel. That evening, I watched her greet him at the door with a smile so warm it could have fooled anyone who hadn't heard what I'd heard that afternoon. You look exhausted, she told him, already moving toward the bar cart in the corner of the room. Let me get you something to drink. It'll help you relax. I watched her hands as she poured. I watched the small, practiced movement. The way she turned her body just slightly to block the glass from view. Just relax. Baby, she said, handing it to him with a smile. He lifted the glass to his lips. And every instinct I had as a mother finally overrode. Every instinct I developed as Ruth. Nathaniel. Wait, I said, stepping forward before I could think better of it. He looked at me, confused. Ruth, what's wrong? You can't drink that. I said. What are you doing? Vanessa's voice turned sharp, almost brittle. This is none of your business. It is my business, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, because I know exactly what you put in that glass. The room went completely still. The kind of stillness that happens right before something breaks. What is she talking about? Vanessa Nathaniel asked, lowering the glass slowly, his eyes moving between the two of us like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't want solved. I don't know what she means, Vanessa said, her voice climbing half an octave higher than usual. This old woman is clearly losing her mind. Nathaniel, honestly, I don't know why you've kept her around this long. She's been nothing but trouble since the day she arrived. I felt something shift inside me then. Some final wall coming down after weeks of holding it steady. Nathaniel, I said, I've tolerated more insults than any mother should have to for the sake of a test, but I won't stay silent any longer. I know exactly who this woman is, and exactly what she's been planning. Ruth, what are you talking about? He asked. His voice caught somewhere between confusion and alarm. It's time she knew the truth, I said, and then I turned to Vanessa, and I let the accent I'd been wearing for weeks fall away completely. Vanessa, this is not Ruth the maid. This is Eleanor Whitfield, my son's mother, and every single day you spent humiliating me in this house. You were showing me exactly who you are. Her face went through several expressions in the space of a few seconds. Disbelief, then something colder, like a woman recalculating a losing hand. You've been lying this whole time, she said, her voice trembling now with something closer to fury than fear. I needed to know the kind of person you truly are. I told her, and now I have all the proof I need. This afternoon, I heard you on the phone. I heard you say you're pregnant, and that you can't tell my son because you've never been intimate with him. I heard you call him your golden ticket. Nathaniel, Vanessa said quickly, turning toward him with tears already gathering. Real or performed? I couldn't tell anymore. And it didn't matter. It's not what it looks like. I was joking with a friend. You know how women talk sometimes. Joking, Nathaniel's voice came out low, dangerously quiet. You call drugging me, claiming another man's child as mine, and stealing everything I've built. A joke. Please. Nathaniel, I love you, she said, her composure finally cracking open completely. I only did this because I was terrified of losing you. Love doesn't involve manipulation. Vanessa, he said, love doesn't involve lies this deep. You've shown me exactly who you are, and it has nothing to do with love. It's greed. It's selfishness dressed up in a wedding dress. I trusted you, he continued, and I could hear something breaking in his voice. Something I hadn't heard since he was a boy asking why he didn't have a father. I thought you loved me for who I am, not for what I have. I was wrong. Please, don't do this, she begged, reaching for his arm. I can change. I'll be better. I promise. It's too late for that, he said, stepping back from her hand like it might burn him. Pack your things. Leave this house tonight. Nathaniel, please, escort her out, he said, and something in his tone left absolutely no room for negotiation. I watched her walk out of that mansion with her composure finally. Completely gone. Still murmuring promises to change that no longer meant anything to anyone in that room. When the door closed behind her, Nathaniel turned to me, and for a moment, he wasn't a billionaire, or the head of a company, or a grown man at all. He was just my son, standing in the wreckage of a mistake he'd almost made. Mama, he said quietly, I almost married her. I can't believe what you did for me. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stepped in. I only want what's best for you, I told him, pulling him into the kind of embrace I hadn't given him since he was small enough to fit entirely in my arms. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you can give them. He held on to me for a long moment, and I felt him ask, quietly, almost like a confession, how long? Mama, how long did you have to endure that? Just for my sake, as long as it took. I told him, for my son, I can endure anything. Weeks passed after Vanessa left, and I watched my son move through his days like a man carrying a question he couldn't quite put into words. Mama, he said to me one evening, sitting in the quiet of the study, all I have now are questions. How do I know if someone loves me for who I am? And not for what I have. Vanessa said all the right things too. Look how that ended. Trust takes time. Nathaniel. I told him, not everyone is like her. Sometimes the right person has been standing in front of you the entire time. You just haven't let yourself see them clearly. Grace, he said quietly, and it wasn't really a question. She was kind to me when she had absolutely nothing to gain from it. I said, I've watched the way she carries herself. With grace and sincerity. Long before I ever knew her name matched that quality. And I've seen the way she looks at you. Nathaniel, there's admiration there. Maybe something more. What if I'm wrong about her too, he asked. What if she's simply better at hiding it than Vanessa was? If you truly want to know someone's heart, I said, you test it properly. See how a person behaves when all the wealth and comfort disappear. He sat with that thought for a long time before he finally acted on it. He started small, taking Grace to dinner somewhere far simpler than she likely expected. I thought you'd want somewhere more expensive, she told him, glancing around at the modest little restaurant he'd chosen. This is fine, he said. I just wanted to spend real time with you. You don't have to try to impress me, Grace, and I don't have to try to impress you either. After Vanessa, he admitted to her, I started doubting everyone. You were hurt, she said gently, but you don't have to carry that fear forever. It wasn't long after that when he came to me with the idea that would become his own test, his own version of the Maid disguise I'd worn weeks earlier. I need to know for certain. Mama, he said, I need to see who stays when they believe there's nothing left to gain. If you need proof, I told him, then test her the right way. But remember what I told you before. Grace has already shown you nothing but kindness, even when she had no idea who either of us really were. He arranged it carefully. Word spread quietly through certain circles that Whitfield Dynamics had collapsed, that bad investments had wiped out everything, that Nathaniel had used his own private savings, trying and failing to save it. I watched him call his employees together, watched him deliver the news with a heaviness in his voice that made the lie feel almost unbearably real. I can't keep any of you employed any longer, he told them. I'm sorry. Then he called Grace into his office. Alone, I don't know how I'll manage now, he told her, and I could see, even standing at a distance, how convincingly he wore the weight of a man who had lost everything. The bank has seized the mansion. I'll have to move into a smaller apartment. Grace didn't hesitate. Not even for a moment. I'm so sorry. Nathaniel, she said, this must be so hard for you. Then, without a trace of calculation in her voice, she added, don't worry about me. I'll find another job somewhere. But if you need help, please let me know. I'm here for you. I watched my son's face in that moment, and I knew, before he said a single word to me later that night, that he had finally found what he'd been searching for all along. Grace came back the very next evening, and every evening after that, carrying groceries she couldn't fully afford on a secretary's salary, insisting she simply wanted to check on him. It's small, she told him, glancing around the modest apartment he'd rented as part of the lie. But it's peaceful. You can start again here, if you want to. She set a bag down on the counter. I brought you food. I figured you might forget to eat. With everything you're worried about. You didn't have to do this, he told her. I know, she said simply. I wanted to. I watched all of this from a careful distance. The way a mother watches a child take their first real steps towards something true. Every visit, every small gesture, chipped away at whatever doubt still lingered in my son's heart. She's remarkable, Mama, he told me one night, something like wonder in his voice. I've never met anyone like her, and you're finally seeing clearly. My son, I said, But it was the people who disappeared that taught him the deepest lesson. He called Tyler Cross, the friend he'd known since business school, the man he'd once called a brother, hoping for some advice, maybe even simple company during what he believed was the hardest stretch of his life. "Tyler, I need your advice," he said into the phone. "Things are falling apart, and I don't know where to even start rebuilding." "Nathaniel, I'm sorry," Tyler said, his voice already distant, already halfway out the door of their friendship. "I've got my own things to deal with right now. Maybe it's best if we keep some distance for a while." "Even you," Nathaniel asked quietly. And I heard, later, how that single moment had cut deeper than almost anything Vanessa had done. On everyone. The calls went unanswered. The invitations stopped coming. The circle of people who had once flocked around his success thinned out until there was almost nothing left of it. Only Grace remained. "Good evening, Nathaniel," she said one night, arriving with dinner and a small notebook full of ideas she'd clearly spent real time putting together. "I brought some thoughts. If you're open to them, you could start small again. Offer consulting first. Use everything you already know. People may stop calling for a while, but the skill in your hands never disappeared." "You really believe I can start again?" he asked her. "You built something once." "From nothing," she said. "You can build it again." That night, sitting across from her in that small apartment, my son finally set down the last piece of the test he'd been running. "Grace," he said slowly, "why are you still here? Everyone else has left. Even Tyler, someone I once considered a brother, has turned his back on me completely. You know I have nothing left to offer you." She was quiet for a long moment before she answered. "There's something I've never told you," she said. "I've loved you since the very first day I saw you. Nathaniel, not because of your wealth, and certainly not because of your success, because of who you are underneath all of that, the way you treat people, your kindness, your determination. It inspired me from the beginning." "You've loved me this whole time?" he asked, something breaking open in his voice. "I never said anything," she admitted. "I thought I wasn't good enough for you. You were always surrounded by beautiful, accomplished women. What could someone like me possibly offer you? I'm sorry I was too blind to see it sooner." He told her, "You've already given me more than I ever thought to ask for. Grace, your kindness, your loyalty, they mean everything to me. While everyone else ran, you stayed. You never once treated me like a failure. You treated me like a man still worth standing beside. I'll always stay," she said, and there was no hesitation in it at all. "I don't care about the money, or the status, or any of it. I care about you." I stood outside that apartment window for a moment longer than I should have, watching the two of them, and I let myself finally believe that whatever painful road had brought us here, it had led somewhere worth arriving at. There was one truth left I still owed her. "There's something I need to tell you," Nathaniel said to Grace a few days later, his voice heavier than she'd ever heard it. "I haven't been completely honest with you. The company never collapsed. None of it was real. I faked all of it. The bankruptcy, the small apartment, losing everything. It was a test." Grace went still. "You tested me. You lied to me about all of it, just to see how I'd react. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, "but I'm asking for it anyway. After what happened with Vanessa, I couldn't trust anything, not even the way someone looked at me. You've shown me what real love actually looks like, and I intend to spend the rest of my life proving I understand that now." She was quiet for a long moment, hurt still visible in her eyes. "You really hurt me," she finally said, "but I forgive you. Nathaniel, just promise me you will never test me like that again." "Never," he said. "I promise you that." That evening, he brought her back to the mansion. The real one. still standing exactly where it had always stood. "Nathaniel, this is where the last truth is waiting. No more lies," he told her. "Everything you see now is the truth." "Grace," he said, taking my hand and placing it gently in hers. "I'd like you to officially meet my mother." "Eleanor Whitfield." "You're his mother," Grace whispered. "I thought you were just a worker here." "I was Ruth for a while," I told her, smiling. It was part of a plan to test someone else entirely. But in the process, I got to know exactly who you really are. You defended me when you believed I was nothing but a poor maid. That told me everything I needed to know about your heart. "Say you'll stay," I told her gently. "You're exactly the kind of person I prayed my son would find." Nathaniel knelt right there, in the home that had known both heartbreak and healing. "Grace Bennett, will you do me the honor of being my wife?" "Yes," she said, tears finally breaking free. "Yes, Nathaniel, because real love was never about the money, the mansion, or the tests we run to protect our hearts. It's about who stays, when they believe there's nothing left to gain." If this story moved you, hit subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Eleanor's place?